Daf Daled Amud Aleph will begin Gimel Amud Beis, 12 lines from the bottom. So we were in the middle of a discussion. We had seemingly a steer in the brises. One brisa says that if a person, he extends his hands filled with pears, and he extends it into another rishus. One brisa says that it's also to retrieve it. It's also to bring it back. And the other brisa says that it's mutter to bring it back. Now, as we discussed previously, this is not like the case of the Mishnah. In the case of the Mishnah, where we said that an akira without a hanocha or a hanocha without an akira is also, this is not the same as the case of the Mishnah, because in the case of the Mishnah, there was a complete hoitzah. There was hoitzah, there was an akira and a hanocha, and transferring from one rishus to the other. The issue over there is that there was not one person who did both the akira and the hanocha. So the Rabbanan answered that even though min hatzera, there's no chiyuv min hatzera, because to be chayiv haitzah, one person has to do the complete malacha. But seif kol seif, there was an akira and the hanocha. There was a malacha done between the two of them. The Rabbanan answered the akira and the hanocha. Now here, if the person extends his hands filled with pears from one rishus to the other, and he retrieves it, ultimately, there is no haitzah. There is no haitzah, no transferring one from one rishus to the other rishus. So the question over here is, did the Rabbanan also make a gzera? Did they counsel the person and say you cannot bring it back and you cannot retrieve it? So that was the shaila, and we seem to have a stira in the two brises. One brise says you can, and one says you can't. So the last teretz that the Gemara gave was, how do we resolve this? We resolve this by saying that it makes a difference. It depends if when he extended his hand, it was already Shabbos, or if he extended it before Shabbos. The brisa that says he can retrieve it is where he extended it before Shabbos. So there was really no akira whatsoever. There was no akira on Shabbos. Now, what he did wrong was, it was an act of omission. It was an act of omission that he should have, before Shabbos came in, he should have brought it back, which he didn't. But that was not severe enough to give a knas and say you can't retrieve it. But when there is a more serious violation, there was an act of commission on Shabbos, so it was already chashecha, and he extended his hand into the other rishus, he did an akira on Shabbos, there the Rabbanan were geyser, and they say you cannot retrieve it. So, but the Gemara entertained a possibility that maybe perhaps you should say the opposite, because it's true that the violation is more severe if he extended his hand on Shabbos, but the consequences are more severe as well. Because if he does not want to, it's too difficult for him to leave his hand extended, and he drops it. So if he extended his hand mishachashech on Shabbos, and now he drops it, so he'll be chayiv. He'll be chayiv now because he made a hanocha on Shabbos. He'll be chayiv achatos. If he extended his hand before Shabbos, even if he does drop it, there's no chiyuv chatas, because there was no akira on Shabbos. So it's true that the violation is more severe. The violation is more severe if he is extended his hand on Shabbos, but the consequences are more severe. So maybe we should say the opposite. Maybe we should say that the brisa that says you cannot retrieve it is where he extended it mibad yom, because it doesn't come lidei chiyuv chatas. And maybe we should say the brisa that says you can retrieve it, you can bring it back, is where he extended it mishchashecha, where the consequence is more severe, so they allowed you to bring it back. So the Gemara says, from the fact that we don't say this, that shows us that we are not that concerned with the consequence, we're more concerned with the violation, and therefore let us resolve, let us be poished the following shaila. So let's see the more inside, 12 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara says, since we do not give the answer, that they say the opposite, that the brisa says that you can retrieve it is where he extended it out on Shabbos so that he doesn't drop it and come lidei chiyuv chatas. Tisha, we should be able to resolve Tisha d'Rav Bibi bar Abaye, we should be able to be poished his shaila. The voyer of Bibi Barabaya hidbik paspatanur. If a person stuck dough to the sides of an oven, in those days they used to bake bread by sticking it onto the sides of the oven, not with pans and not with grates, but sticking it onto the side. So hidbik paspatanur hitir loyleredaisa kaidem shiavli dechiv chatas oiloi. Did they permit him to bring it out, to take it out, before he comes to the Dechiv Chatas? What does this mean? Afia baking is one of the malachas on Shabbos. It's also to bake on Shabbos. If a person put the dough into the oven on Shabbos, he was hidbik pas betanur. Now he's not chayiv yet. He's only chayiv until the bread becomes baked. So if he put the dough in the oven, now he's not chayiv yet. Did they allow him to remove it? Did they allow him to remove it before he comes lidei chiyuv chatas? That was his shaila. What's the shaila? Why isn't it a davar pashut? The shaila is because b'dias hapas, removing the bread from the oven, that is an isser d'Rabbanan. The Rabbanan, that's a shvus d'Rabbanan, b'dias hapas. It's not a malacha. The Gemara calls it a chochma vein malacha, but that chochma the Rabbanan asert. So now he has this dilemma over here. He has put the bread into the oven, the dough into the oven on Shabbos. If he relieves it there, he'll come lidei chiyuv chatas. If he removes it, well, it'll be over in Isser Rabbanan. Did the Rabbanan waive their Isser of Redias Apas so that the person will not come lidei chiyuv chatas? That was his shaila. Now the details of this case we'll see shortly. The Gemara on Daf Daled Amud Aleph goes into the details and the particulars of this case. What are we talking about here when he put it in B'shaygi, B'mezid, etc.? We'll see shortly. But in general terms, the Gemara, so he had a shaila, is it mutter to be over the Derabanan of Redias Apas so that he does not come to the Isser Derais, to the more severe Isser of Afiyah, of baking? That was his shaila. Now, which is similar to the case over here. It's similar to the case over here where the Rabbanan say that in order that the person should not come to drop the Paris and come lidei the chiyuv chatas of Haitzah, would they allow him to bring the Paris back in? Now, from the fact that we don't entertain that, from the fact that we say that the brisa that says you cannot retrieve it, you must leave your hand extended, even though there is the consequence that you might drop it and put it down, and come lidei chiyuv chatas, nevertheless we don't permit it. Similarly, we should not permit Redias Apas, removing the bread from the oven, even though he'll come lidei and Isser D'Oraisa, we should not permit it because of the existing D'Rabbanan. So let's see back more inside. So Tisha D'Rav Bibi Barabai the Rabbi Barabai Hidbik Paspatan Retir L'Daisa Tem Shav L'Dei Chatas Oiloi Hetiru Tisha T'Loi Hetiru. Yes, let us be a resolve from here. Be poishet that it is not mutter. It's also you cannot remove the dough from the bread from the oven. So haloi kasha v'tisha, yeah, be poishet. V'bayisem, the Gemara says, v'bayisem alternative will tell you, loylam loytish. No, you cannot resolve it. You cannot resolve the case you cannot resolve Rabbi from this brisa the way we answer this brisa, because there's an alternate way of learning the brisa. You do not have to learn, as we said before, that if he extended his hand out on Shabbos, even b'shayeg, that it would be osir to retrieve it. Previously, we learned that that if he extended his hand out when Shabbos already came in, after the onset of Shabbos, if he extended his hand out, even if it was b'shayeg, you cannot retrieve it. Now we're saying, no, perhaps there's another way of understanding, resolving the steer in the brisa, and we would say that if you did a b'shayeg, even on Shabbos, you could retrieve it. So you would not be able to resolve Rabbi. The brisa that says that you can retrieve it, that's b'shayeg. B'shoigeg lo kansu rabbanan. Since it was only b'shoigeg, the rabbanan did not give him a knas, and they allowed him to bring it back in. B'mezid kansu rabbanan. But if he did b'mezid kansu rabbanan. So now as Rashi speaks out, so therefore, why can we not resolve Rabbi Bibi's shaila? So now, if he did it b'shoigeg, he put his hand out b'shoigeg, and he extended it out b'shoigeg, and we say over there that he's permitted to retrieve it, there you cannot resolve Rabbi Bibi. Why? Because what did the Rabbanan, where were they makel? They were makel on a knas. They were makel on a knas, they imposed a knas, a person extends his hand out, that you can't retrieve it. B'shoigeg, they were makel. He only did a b'shoigeg, they were makel. But that's not the same category of the Isser Rabbanan. As we'll see through the Masechta, there's different categories of the Rabbanans in Hilchot Shabbos. Now, Redias Apas was done by an earlier Bezdin. It was done by Minyan, and that is something that is more chomedik to the Rabbanan, and that is something that you don't see that you can waive that. You can waive that just because the Rabbanan were makel on a knas, which was imposed later. When sometimes the Rabbanan, when they see the situation that people are lax in mitzvahs and they're doing averas, they impose a knas. They have to make a geder to strengthen the shmiras mitzvahs. So at certain points in time, at different periods in time, they impose knasses. The severity of a knas is not on the same level as a takana that was done by minyan, and a minyan of Bezdin, and the shvus the Rabbanan is more chomer. Redias Apaz is greater chomer. So just because they were makel on a knas, doesn't show you that they would be makel on Redias Apaz. Now previously we said that they were machmir on a knas. If they're machmir on a knas, they would be machmir on Redias Apaz. But over here, when you say just because they're makel on the knas, you can't learn out that be makel on Redias Apaz. Now let's look at the other side. So now the Brisa says that when it's been mazid, the Brisa said that when you cannot retrieve it, b'mezid kansur rabbanan. It was talking b'mezid, and they gave a knas. So why don't you learn out also in the case of Rabbi by the pas that, well, if they're machmir b'mezid and they give a knas that he can't retrieve his hand, certainly why don't we say that they would be machmir and say you cannot be right of the pas, you cannot take the pas out? No, she says, because even though we're understanding now the brisa that says that you cannot retrieve it is talking when he put it out b'mezid, and even though there is the possible consequence that he'll drop it and he'll be over, but it's only a possibility. By Redias Pas, if you do not allow him to be right of the pas, to remove it and bring it back in before it gets baked, it's a certainty. He is for sure going to be baked and it'll be over. So just because we're machmir over here and say he cannot retrieve his hand, even if it was done b'mezid, we give him a knas, he cannot retrieve his hand, even though it might lead to the malach, he might drop it. You can't resolve Rabbi's case where it will certainly become baked and he'll certainly be over, so you can't resolve it in either way, not shogeg and not mezid. So therefore, we can't resolve Rabbi's case. The boy same as the Gemara says. Now we have, going back to the brisa. One brisa says he can retrieve his hand. One says he can't. So now the Gemara is going to offer a different way of understanding, of explaining the brisa, so that it's not a steer. So Rabbi, we now will come back to Rabbi's case about Redias Pas a little later, but we cannot resolve it from these brisas. But now, in any event, the Gemara says there is another way of resolving the stira, the contradiction between the brisas. Maybe I'll tell you that both brisas are talking where he extended his hand out b'shoigeg. And really, if he did a b'shoigeg, even though he did it on Shabbos, but it was a shoigeg, really, fundamentally, we should say there's no knas. He only did a b'shoigeg. And it's taka machlokes, but what's the machlokes? Whether the constant shaggy got to mezid. Mar savar constant shaggy got to mezid, mar savar like constant shaggy got to mezid. One man Domer says that even though essentially shaggy we should not give him a knas, but we're afraid that it might lead to a person doing it b'mezid, so we do constant. The other Brisa says no, we do not. We have the knas. He only did it b'shaggy, and we're not constant shaggy got to mezid. Gemara gives yet another way of understanding the Brises. Really, I'll tell you, they all agree that b'shoigeg there's no knas, and they both agree that we do not impose a knas shoigeg automazed. So, what's the difference in the Brise? Why does one Brise say you can retrieve it, and why it says you can't? It depends. Is he retrieving it into the same chotzer or into another chotzer? If he is now, he extended his hand from his chotzer, his area, into the Rishus Harabim. Now the point was, why did he extend his hand? He extended it because he wanted to get it out of his chotzer. He wanted to remove it from his chotzer. Now, if he ultimately puts it in somewhere else, he retrieves it, and he doesn't put it down on the Rishus, but he puts it down, and he wants to put it down into another chotzer, he is accomplishing, at least part of, he wants accomplishing what he wants to. He's getting it out of his chotzer. So over there we say that in such a case, since he's accomplishing part of what he wants to, it's awesome. But if he simply brings it back into his chotzer, so since he only did it b'shoigeg, and nothing is being accomplished over here, right? He's not accomplishing his intention, is not being fulfilled in any which way, because it's ending up back in his own chotzer, then he can retrieve it, he can bring it back. So the Gemara says, let's see inside kan, so I'll tell you, loy kash kan loy sechotzer, kan lechotzer acheres. Kiraboy minei Ravam and Rav Nachman haisu yaram leia peres. He asked him to follow shave his hands was full of peres. He extended it outside. So can he return it to the same chotzer? It's muter. What about to a different chotzer? Also. So to bring it right back in is muter. To take it and put it over in another chotzer, it's also maishno. Well, what's the difference between the two? He's just bringing it back. He's not putting it into the Rishus Harabim. He's just bringing it back. So what's the difference? Why do you say that if he doesn't bring it right back, then he can't bring it to another chotzer, he has to leave it out extended? What's the difference? So he said, when you measure a core of salt, meaning one shot in Rashi says is that he brushed them aside. It's a milsa b'dichusa. If you measure a core of salt for me, I'll tell you. And one shot is that the second shot is that there's no comparison. There's no comparison between the two. If you won't be able to compare the two together. If you put a core of salt and eat it with a core of salt, you can't compare the two together. Why not? Because Because in the case where he puts it into a different chotzer, at least in part, his intention has been accomplished. He's removed it from his chotzer, which is really his intention. He wants to get it out of his chotzer. That's been accomplished. But when he retrieves it, he just undid what he did. So there was no kiyum of machshava, so therefore it doesn't have any appearances of being any hoitzah, and it won't lead to hoitzah and lead to carrying it, so therefore they allowed him to bring it in. So Taisus explained, kan l'chatzer acheres, when he say to a chatzer acheres, so when it says also lachzira, it says, when Taisus says, when it says also lachzira, it doesn't mean that it's also to remove it, to return it to him. It's also lachzira to a different chatzer. But to remove it to him, to return it to him, is muter. So now let's return to the case of Rabivi by Hidbik Pas Bataner. The Gemara is going to now analyze this in more detail. Kufa, boy, Rabivi Barabai. He'd big pas betanur. If a person, he stuck the dough to the sides of the tanur. So at the time he put it in, it's not baked yet. If it remains in the oven, it will be baked, and it's oifa, and it'll be malach. Did they permit him to remove it, to be roided before he comes lidei achiv chatas or not? Amar le Rav Acha bar Abai le Ravina hechidami. What's the case? If you're talking about that he did b'shoigeg, and he didn't remember that it's Shabbos, or didn't remember that it's also, so he doesn't know that there's anything wrong here. Laman etiru. So who are they matered for? He doesn't know that he did anything wrong. If he put it in b'shoigeg and he still doesn't know that it's also, so who are they being matered for? So what's the shaila relevant? Who's it relevant to? Maybe perhaps you'll say perhaps you'll say that when he put it in to the oven, when he stuck it to the sides of the oven, that he was shoigig. He didn't realize it was awesome. And now as it's being baked, he reminded himself and he realized that it's awesome. Now he's in this quandary. Now the question is, can he remove it or not? And that's the shaila. So would he be mechayiv? It says, so the question is, were they matim koim lovdei chiv chatas? Now, if he knows now, before it's baked, but he knows now that it's also, would he be chayv chatas in any event? A person is not chayv chatas unless he's a shoygig from beginning to end. From the beginning of the malacha to the end of the malacha. Now over here, if when he put the dough in the oven, he was a shoygig, but now before it's baked, it hasn't been baked yet, now he realizes that it's also, he's not a shoygig. By the end of the malacha, by the baking time, he's not a shoygig. So there's no chiv chatas anyway. So what do you mean? Were they matrim before he comes to the chiv chatas or not? Tais is a little bothered with this question because in a chanami, there won't be in actuality a chatas. There won't be a chiyuv chatas, but there'll be an iser chatas. And as we'll see later in the Gemara does amend the chiyuv to iser. So but the Gemara is now searching for a different alternative. The Gemara is saying at this point he won't be chayiv a chatas anyway. This is bothered, but there'll still be an iser of a chatas. You can't in actuality bring the korban chatas, but it's an iser. He put it in b'shoigeg. It's an isser that would have led to a chatas. But in any event, the Gemara is rejecting this. We can't say that the case is talking where he put it in b'shoigeg and now he realizes, because he won't be chayiv a chatas anyway. If he now realizes before it's baked that it's osir, at this point he's not a shoigeg. And perhaps you'll say the case is talking where the person put the dough in the oven, b'mezid, el b'mezid, kodim she'yavlu day iser skilam. So el b'mezid, perhaps you'll tell me that it's b'mezid. No, kodim she'yavlu day iser skilam boile. Then it should say not chatas, it should say kodim she'yavlu day iser skila, it should say. Because if it's b'mezid, it's not a chatas, there's a question, there's an issue, the potential punishment would be skila. Omar Rav Shila la'olam b'shoigeg. Really, I'll tell you shoigeg. Ulaman hetiru la'achirim. Really, I'll tell you it's a shoigeg. And who are they matered for? They're matered for achir. Really, I'll tell you it's a shoigeg. And he's still a shoigeg. So what's the question? If he's shoigeg, how can he, if he's a shoigeg, how can we say that now, is he permitted to remove it? How can he be permitted to remove it if he doesn't know about it? So who's the Laman Hatiru? Who can they permit it for? Who is it mutter for? Laman Hatiru. If he doesn't know about it, no, the question is la'achirim. The question is la'achirim. Other people now see what's going on. Do we allow other people to now take it out of the oven so that this person won't come lidei achatos? That's the question. Do we permit it for other people so that this person does not come lidei achatos? He's takesh shogeg from beginning to end. Now if it remains over there, it stays over there, it'll be baked, and he'll be chayav v'chatas. Other people are seeing it. Can they remove it so that he doesn't come lidei achiyav chatas? What do you mean? Would we tell Reuven to do an avera so Shimon doesn't come lidei an avera? How would we tell somebody that you take this out of the oven, you remove it from the oven, you be over this iser radius apas, so that your friend doesn't come lidei achiv chatas? Will we say such a thing? So therefore, this cannot be the pshat. It cannot be the pshat that the person did it b'shoigeg, and he's still a shoigeg. And the question is, if somebody else can remove it on his behalf, so that he doesn't come lidei avera. Taisus is bothered because we do find cases that we say a person does an avera on behalf of somebody else. For instance, the Mishnah in Gittin says that if a person is a chatzi eved, chatzi ben charen, he is half freed and half not, he can't get married. He can't be mekayim the mitzvah pru'ravu. So we say to the master, you have to free him. You have to free him so that he can get married and be mekayim pru'ravu. Now there's an isser to free an eved. An eved kanani, there is an isser to be meshachrim. And yet we say to the master, we say to the adon, you free him so that this eved now can become mitzvah pru'ravu. And we see Rabbi Yehuda also, we have the case of Rabbi Yehuda, he was Meshacher his Eved, they were missing one for a minyan, and it was Meshacher his Eved, even though that's an Isser, it says Leila Metavaidu, so that it can make a minyan. Taisa says that it's not a universal rule that we don't say to someone, do an Avera so that your friend can be a kind of mitzvah. We also do look at the relative importance of the mitzvahs. If it's a mitzvah rabbah of pru'aravu or a mitzvah derabim, then we say do a lesser avera for the greater mitzvah. Taisus gives another teretz and says that over here, specifically in this type of a case, and this type of a case that we will not say do an avera on behalf of your friend so he can do a mitzvah, or that so he doesn't do an avera, because over here the person that was hidbli pas betaner, he was paisheya, he was negligent, he was paisheya, and in such a case we don't say to one person, you do an avera to save your friend from being over, where he is negligent, he was paisheya and it's his fault. The case is the eved, it's nobody's fault. It happens to be that's the metzias, that's reality. So there we say, on behalf of somebody, you could do it so that it'll ultimately end up being a mitzvah. And he'll be saved from einish. And it'll be a mitzvah, a great mitzvah. But when someone's paisheya, there we don't say it. Al kulpanim. We still haven't resolved what is exactly the case over here of Rabbi Yishmael. What is the case that we're saying that he put the pas in the tanur, and now the shaila is, can it be over radius a pas so he doesn't come lidei iser? Elam or Ravashi lo elam b'mezid. Really, I'll tell you, he put the dough in the oven b'mezid. Ve'ema kodim shiyav lidei iser skila. And don't learn chatas, learn skila. He put the dough in the oven, and now if we don't allow him to remove it, he'll come lidei iser skila. So do we allow you to be over the iser d'Rabbanan or radius a pas, so that he does not, do we allow him to be over the Isser Radius Apas, so he does not come lidei the Isser Skila? Taisus asks, what do you mean? Is he going to listen? If the consequence is that he gets Skila, is he going to listen? He's not going to listen and get killed. So what's our Shaila Bechlal? Taisus says, no. If he would listen, and the only reason that he's not doing it is because the Chachamim said it's also that the Chachamim posed the Isser Radius Apas even in the face of him now baking the bread, Lamaisa he would not get skill. So he says Lamaisa he would not get skill in such a case, because really he would remove the bread. It's only because the Chachamim is saying you can't, so at the end of the day he would not get skill. But the question is, do the Rabbanan, would they impose their Isser of Radius Apas in the face of not Lamaisa getting skila, but of an Isser skila? Other Meforshim learn differently. They say, no, that since he did b'mezid, he put it in the oven, even if he does not remove it, even though he's not removing it because he's not permitted to remove it, because he's being restrained from removing it, he still will get skila. I'm the Sfasemes, others, but this is Taisus Shita. So anyway, that's how we want to learn the case. He learns that this is mentioned clearly. It's mentioned. It's not mentioned in the way of a shaila that we learned it before. It's a shaila. Did we permit it or not? He says, or if a person put the pas in the tanner, that they did permit him to remove it before, so he doesn't come lidei iser skila.